You are listening to A Light to the Nations. This podcast is a production of the Ephesus School Network.
Passing alongside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men." And immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on a little farther, he saw James the son of Zebedee and John his brother, who were in their boat mending the nets. And immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired servants and followed him. That's Mark chapter 1, verses 16 through 20. Hello and welcome to episode 63 of A Light to the Nations. I'm your host, Father Fred Shaheen. In this passage, we hear about Jesus passing by the Sea of Galilee and calling two sets of brothers. We have already seen that in Mark, the sea is a stand-in to that passageway to the other side, the place to which Jesus will be leading his disciples and from which he will be teaching them to seek followers. First off, we encounter Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon. It is said that they were casting a net, for they were fishermen. Mark's use of the verb ἀμφιβάλλοντας is important to note here. Vacillating by itself means to throw. The prefix amphi adds the sense of around or on both sides. Although there is no direct object here, English translators supply their nets, since given the setting and that they are fishermen, that's the implication. But hearing it in Greek, it sounds like they were casting or throwing back and forth, as in vacillating. When we consider how in Paul's letter to Galatians, he recounts that Cephas, as he refers to Peter, initially accepted the one gospel to Jews and Gentiles, and then betrayed that understanding through his behavior, the connotation fits. For before certain men came from James, he was eating with the Gentiles. But when they came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. That's Galatians 2, verse 11. Galatians is axial in our understanding of the New Testament, and the four Gospels in particular, of which Mark is the first production. Note here in Galatians how Paul refers to Peter by his Aramaic name, which parallels Mark's introducing him as Simon. And the one who is called the brother of Simon has a Greek name, Andrew. By calling Simon and Andrew brothers, Mark is addressing the open mission of the gospel to both Jews and Greeks, that is, Gentiles. But he is questioning the commitment of Simon to that mission by his choice of the verb ἀμφιβάλλοντας. Recall that since he is named first and Andrew is referred to as his brother, Simon is the reference here. The question raised about Simon Peter's commitment to the gospel will be played out later in Mark, when he misunderstands how Jesus is the Christ, and in his thrice denial of Jesus after telling him, "Even though they all fall away, I will not." Yet here in the first chapter of Mark, their action in response to Jesus' call is immediate. They leave their nets and follow him. Afterward, Jesus sees two others. Notice again how one of them is the reference. James is named first and called the son of Zebedee, with John being identified as his brother. The name Zebedee appears nowhere else in the New Testament. And there's no reason in the narrative for Mark to tell us that James is the son of Zebedee. To understand this function, we look at the Old Testament reference to Zebedee in Joshua chapter 7. After Joshua had led the people of God to victory in the fall of Jericho, they suffered a huge setback when trying to conquer Ai. The reason for the sudden and sharp decline in their fortune becomes immediately clear. Someone in the camp had broken the command to burn everything and to not keep anything from the spoils at Jericho, and in doing so, he brought a curse upon all. But the people of Israel broke faith in regard to the devoted things. For Achan, the son of Carmi, son of Zebedee, son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, took some of the devoted things, and the anger of the Lord burned against the people of Israel. Joshua 7, verse 1. Thus it was a son of Zebedee that brought a curse upon the entire camp by contravening the instruction given by God through Joshua. Although in English they are spelled differently, Zebedee and Zabdi are from the same original. Given that there is no New Testament reference for anyone with that name, it behooves us to look at the story in Joshua for meaning. The Semitic expression son of means one who is just like another, who behaves in a similar way. Thus, in calling James the son of Zebedee, Mark is suggesting that, like his namesake in Joshua, this James acted independently and contravened the will of the one who appointed him. In Galatians, it is James, the leader of the church in Jerusalem, who put pressure on Peter to stop sharing a table with Gentiles, thus acting in a way that betrayed the message of the gospel. For before certain men came from James, he, that is Peter, was eating with the Gentiles. But when they came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. And the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him, so that even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. Galatians 2, verses 12 and 13. Something else Mark tells us here casts a shadow on his introduction of James and John. He tells us they were in their boat mending their nets. We had already heard of Simon and Andrew that they were casting their nets, for they were fishermen. Here, it seems that Mark introduces two other fishermen who are in a boat, but not doing the one thing that you would expect fishermen to be doing, that is, fishing. But instead, they are doing maintenance work. To put it in contemporary lingo, when we meet James and John, they've already closed up shop for the day. To understand better why this seemingly small detail matters, consider how in the ancient world writing was a painstakingly laborious and expensive undertaking. The biblical authors wrote only what was necessary to convey their message. Certainly, if you are going to introduce fishermen in a story and then depict them not doing the one thing you would expect fishermen to be doing, actually fishing, you have a sound reason. And this also fits the detail that when Jesus called them, James and his brother left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hirelings and followed him. Following him was the correct response to his call. As his disciples, Jesus would make them fishers of men, just as he had said to Simon and Andrew. But the hired servants, mentioned in verse 20, who stay in the boat with their father, deserve some attention. In John, Jesus speaks about himself as the good shepherd, and he contrasts his care for them with that of the one who is merely hired for a wage. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. John 10, verses 12 and 13. The text in Mark, then, raises the question of what kind of care for the flock would James and his brother John demonstrate. In Ezekiel, we hear a harsh indictment of the shepherds of Israel, appointed by God, who do not care for and feed his sheep, but instead feed themselves. In the Gospels, particularly John chapter 10, which we cited above, Jesus is correcting that mission and showing himself to be the true shepherd, the real David, appointed by God for this purpose. And he is training his 12 to go out and follow a similar course of action. The fact that James and John leave their father Zebedee with the hirelings in the boat is promising. Like Simon and Andrew, the other set of brothers, the initial response of James and John to the call is correct. James, John, and Cephas, the Aramaic name for Simon, are all named in Galatians, in which we hear that they seemed to be pillars. That's 2 verse 9. This explains why, several times in Mark, the three get singled out by Jesus katithian, that is, privately for special insider instruction. With the addition of Andrew, as a group of 4, they will appear later, questioning Jesus about the destruction of the temple and when these things would take place. The 4 representing the 4 gates of the temple in Jerusalem, but not the earthly city, which will soon be a pile of rubble, but rather the Jerusalem above, the one which, Paul says, is free and is our mother. Galatians 4, verse 26. Overall, the Gospel of Mark sounds like an invitation to its main addressees, the circumcision party of James, which influenced Peter in his vacillating behavior to accept the one gospel of the crucified Messiah as preached by Paul, and to forego both the Judaism of the temple and its earthly city, which are bound by proscriptions and dietary regulations. Wherever they preach this one gospel, its recipient is offered the cleansing by accepting the word and submitting to it. Thus, any time they share a table with anyone, no matter who, they are already behaving according to the rule of the kingdom of God, which is, according to what Jesus preached in verse 15, at hand. That is to say, it is up next, but still ahead of them. And with that, we conclude episode 63 of A Light to the Nations. Join us next time as we continue to read our way through the Gospel of Mark. Thank you for listening today.